Hello, you have a prepaid call from
Dennis L. Rader,
an inmate at
Kansas Department of Corrections.
To accept this call, press or say.
When you went before Judge Waller and he asked you to talk about the details of all the crimes, what were you thinking? What was that like for you?
Well, I guess I want to be truthful. I wanted to let people know what happened, and people were aghast that I would go like that. Whoa, it's like I was putting on a show or something.
Were you feeling anything when that was happening?
I just unloaded. Maybe it was a way of a pressure valve, I guess.
Okay.
Here I am. Yeah.
Why did you want to put your story out there?
The main thing is to help people like yourself understand a dark mind. You know, I lived a normal life. You gotta have a real dark mind. And that's the $64,000 question. Why did I do that?
So your fantasy life was more important to you than your real life, it sounds like.
Well, I guess in a degree it was. The fantasy world was always right there, you know, not very far away. I could switch gears and move into one and move out of the other very quickly.
I would love it that you could just get some of this stuff off your chest. Your health is declining, and I think it'd be really great for you to be able to just say what you need to say. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I think so. Well, good morning.
Hello, Dennis. I'm in Wichita. Haven't been here since 2016.
Oh,
You ready to go?
I guess so.
Okay.
Let me get a drink of water here. Be right
Okay.
back. My mouth is awful dry. Nervous.
Okay. So what's your cell like?
Well, basically it's a 12 by 8, concrete naturally. The concrete has cracked, and I look through that, and I look for figures. Mainly I look for eyes first, and that's what I usually spot, the eyes, and then I could probably draw hundreds and hundreds of those things off the floor. I call them cave monsters.
Is that why you call yourself a cave monster?
Yeah, people call me a monster. I guess I am sort of a monster. But basically, Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde.
What were you anticipating when you thought about getting married? What were you anticipating being as a husband?
Well, I think the main thing I'm in is love. I was really in love with my wife, and I still am. I still have fond memories. But basically, I think like any man, we fall in love. We don't really have any other thoughts except you want to eventually, marry marry your person that you've met and falling in love with.
You got a job at Cessna, which you loved, right? And then you were laid off. What was that like for you?
Oh, that was a tremendous blow to me. That was what really set me off on going to my first break-in. Back the day I got laid off.
But why would that? Why would getting laid off get you to the point where you want to break in someone's house?
I think I was just frustrated with the system. So I had an opportunity for that evening. And I just basically went on a prowl and broke into my first home.
That person wasn't involved in your layoff. Why would you pick someone like that to take out your frustration on?
Basically, I wanted to do something, I guess, deviant. That was a way to relieve my frustration.
Did it work?
Oh, no, I got worse. I had started on this dark side a long time before that, and the volcano was finally starting to erupt. I turned the temperature up in the house so that would mess up their body heat temperatures. I did things like that.
Do you remember where you spotted her?
It's probably when I took my wife to work. This is the winter now, and there's a lot of ice and snow. A lot of times she didn't like to drive on that. I wasn't at work at that time. I was prowling that area where the hotels lived, and then saw her and the kids go to school one day. So after, I thought, well, this might be it. My first fantasy victim would become real. Basically, I just focused on that all the time. I was up in the neighborhood. I'd check on that house, one thing after another.
What was your plan? What did you think you were going to do that day?
I had a barn that I picked out northwest of Wichita, that I was going to take her and kidnap her, probably hang her. This Otero kind of messed up the whole formula. He wasn't supposed to be there, but he was. They have a fence all the way around. I hadn't looked over the side of the fence. All of a sudden, there's dog prints all over the place. Didn't think about that. But I had to do something. I was teed up too much. But about that time, I reached down, took my cutters, and cut the phone line. Remember the cube, you know, good guy, bad guy. Was a fairly good father and husband to my family. I worked at church, I worked at Scouts. Then there's the dark side of me, secret. And that's very strong.
Did you think you would do it again? Did you think that's it, I'm done, it's out of my system? Or did you think
that was there for a while. I guess you call that the cold stage or whatever, and then it starts to build again.
Okay.
Probably just like a person on a drug. They take a drug and they're high for a while, and then it wears off, and then they're ready to go at it again.
You did hear that on the radio when it happened?
Yes, I heard it. We were on our way to high school. I was 14, sophomore. I rode to school in one of my employer's daughters in a station wagon. I always had a crush on her. And I loved sitting in the front seat, and she always wore a skirt. And it was on the radio. And I heard that. When they found out that they were tied up, that's what I wanted to do. That went back to the bondage thing.
After the Oteros, the Catherine Bright murder wasn't very long afterward. Didn't you think that was risky?
No, I think the objective was that house and her, and everything else seemed to not mean that much. But she played into some of the magazines I was seeing, you know, criminals going after co-eds and this sort of thing. I saw her one day in her house. I thought, well, this might be all right. I mean, she's coming from somewhere at that time of the day, and I'm in between classes, so that's a possibility.
When you had picked out Catherine Bright, how long did you watch her before you decided to act?
I parked away and watched that address for a while to see whether that was constant. And yeah, she did come home in the afternoon. So I thought, well, all I have to do is break in and be waiting for her when she comes in. So it took probably about a month. She panicked, and I just, out of sheer stupidness, I stabbed her. And I didn't like to use a knife. I really did. And then secondly, he ran out of the place. The door was wide open. I saw him running down the porch and heading out into the road. So it was just total mess.
When did you first feel like you were a serial killer?
Probably after Catherine Bright.
When did you think of a barn for the elaborate torture devices?
Back in grade school. That's when I first started. It happened when we were playing cowboys and Indians. We would tie each other up in a silo, and I got sexually excited when I was either tied up, or even better, when somebody else was tied up. Later on, I came up with my sexual fantasies about the silo.
Did you pay attention to the news coverage afterward?
Oh, yeah, very close. We paid a lot of attention to the newspapers and to listen to the news and any tips. They had a fairly good description of me that he gave to the police. I looked at that and I said, whoa, that's pretty close to the way I look.
What gave you that idea that you should have a name, and how did you come up with it?
I've been reading books like The Boston Strangler, and basically I did mind the people.
But other killers didn't name themselves.
No, they're picked up by the media or the police. But I thought I'd be a little different. I'd go ahead and name my own name and be done with it. I had a tape recorder at that time, and I kept telling the tape recorder, why did I do this? What caused this? And I think that I finally figured out what I call the Factor X to make me do that. Factor X is an overall drive. Even today, if I see something on TV or a picture or start thinking about the old times and fantasy, I still get that feeling, that sexual feeling. I really do. I can't, it's just still there. I blamed it on the Factor X. Just didn't all of a sudden decide, whoa, I'm going to go Jolie Otero. And just building and building. It built to it, kind of like a volcano.
When do you think that started for you?
It started all the way when I was young.
Let me take you back to your childhood. You haven't talked very much, even to me, about your father and your sense of your father.
Just a minute, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh, there's lunch.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it.
What do you have?
Bologna, they kind of warmed it up a little bit. I got some scrambled eggs and I got a biscuit.
Well, I mean, feel free to eat while you're talking if you think you can do both. I don't want you to waste that. So let's go back to your childhood.
My dad was sort of my hero.
Okay.
He was a really good male model. He took us fishing, taught us how to hunt. He worked 2 jobs, moonlighting, and he was just a busy man.
Would you say you were close to him growing up then?
Yeah, I was closer probably him to Mom, but they were both good parents. My mom, she was vacuuming the living room, and under one of the sofas, she got the ring caught in one of the springs, and she couldn't reach it with her other hand because she was hurting, so she asked me to go for help. That image of her being a terror and kind of held is prolonged me into my dark side. I did start to abuse farm cats. I built a box and I cut out the top of it just for a cat head. And then I get some milk. I'd wait till one would get in there, and I'd pull the string, and the box would drop over. So it sticks its head up through the hole, and I had a noose for it.
I never knew that. Why did you like hanging cats?
There was some sexual excitement there to see them hung. My 5th grade teacher, she was a real dominating female, and she used to pick on weaklings like me. Well, anyway, she became my first fantasy victim. I would sneak out and do some window peeking, and so I'd catch her occasionally in her bedroom. That's where I had my first sexual outlet, and it wasn't normal because it wasn't with a female. It was me tying myself up in a hedgerow against the fence, and I had this weird feeling. And whoa, what was this? What happened? To create that again, I had to use bondage. I used to like to go to people's closets, mess around in their Chester drawers and stuff, and find nylon socks and panties and things of that nature. I would steal them. That was kind of exciting.
So no one ever caught you or complained that things were missing?
No, I was real careful.
Once you knew who you were going to target, what did that feel like to you?
Well, it's kind of like the big game hunter, I guess you'd say. He's got the target, or he's got the animal in his sights and his gun. This is going to be it. I think it just popped in my head one day. I had to come up with some kind of nickname. A lot of times you'll see the name on a boat, or the oil men, they always name their oil wells. I was all geared up to do something, and it didn't happen at Project Green, where the girls were home. But I think I went to a couple other houses, knocked on the door, so I was in the mood. So that was random, but the opportunity struck, and I already had the plan what I was going to do, and there was the opportunity, so I latched onto it.
Having the children there in Shirley Vian's house, did that bother you at all?
No, my objective was to her. Kind of like a World War II, you're flying a bomber, and you've got enemy aircraft shooting you down, but your main focus is to drop the bombs on what they want you to drop the bombs on. Nothing else mattered. She was my focus.
Weren't you worried about what might happen with them?
No. They were old enough to take care of themselves. I never raped a girl. Just one of those things I just didn't do. Felt it's just a little bit too far. I think even serial killers probably have some kind of taboo. Yeah, that was mine. I would not rape a female. I use clove hitches on hands or on feet. Those are very hard knots to get undone. Basically, once that knot comes to its peak, there's no way you can get out of that. So that was probably my favorite knot, but the other one was tie a knot on the end of the line and make a slip knot.
How long had you been studying other serial killers?
Well, it started about when I was about 14. And I think part of it come from a guy in California who took pictures of the models.
Harvey Glattman, yeah.
That was pretty exciting to me.
You enjoyed the look of fear on your victim's face?
Well, yes, it's sort of a sexual arousement with Fox. Things went pretty smooth and everything, and although her face was down, it's just the idea that I had done it is all I needed. It's like my mom when her finger was caught in the couch. She was struggling. After the incident, then I had time to quickly go through some of her stuff, and I took some of her nicer clothes or slips and stockings and things of that nature, my tokens. Here I go home, and my wife's there, so I had to make up a story why it was running a little late. We were having car trouble at that time, so I just blamed it on the car. When I made the phone call about Fox thing had already happened, and there was nothing about it. And that's probably kind of like a cat and mouse thing. I went ahead and used the phone. Stupid. I was so afraid that someone would ID that and say, well, I know that voice. Well, that's Dennis Rader.
When they finally announced that there was a serial killer on the loose in Wichita, what was that like for you?
That was a pretty big buzz, really. I mean, that's not saying that's good, but wow, they finally recognized me. I felt kind of cocky at that time, I guess you would say. I always had the tripod, and so I rigged that up, and lo and behold, I could take pictures of myself. And then what I had was a squeegee ball. Basically, you ran the cord over to your hand, and then somewhere I hid the ball when I was in my pictures, and I just squeezed that ball, and the ball would click. I used the cross-dressing and tying myself up as a sexual fantasy, like I was the victim. I knew they would say something about it on TV. BTK sent us a letter. That was an extremely big high, I can tell you that.
Why do you think you wanted this recognition?
Along my childhood, I've always felt like I was an underdog. And that, somewhere along the lines of getting a high in recognition, I think it's like the movie stars and stage people, they see the picture in a newspaper or a story about them. I think they get a rush on that.
While you were in school, you were also committing your own crimes. Were you listening for things that would help you?
Yes, I was very careful with the forensics. I made sure I didn't leave my fingerprints. I wore rubber gloves, ones that you use when you're washing dishes. One of the people that went to our church worked with Xerox. So he eventually figured out one of my original letters came from the copies from WSU. He was that sharp enough. That, whoa. After I found that out, whatever I copied, I didn't send that in. I went to different copies before I sent it in.
After you knew that they had traced your Xeroxing to Wichita State, did it scare you that they were closing in on you?
It did. I was prepared for the police to come knocking on the door. There were times when I thought they were closing in, and I would move things around and kind of clean up a little bit. I had hidey holes here or there. I had some cabinets at home that I could hide stuff in. There was a shed. I had old barns I hid stuff in, and then I had hiding holes underneath the house, crawl space, and I had hiding holes up in the attic.
You got Wichita all in a frenzy over a serial killer, and then you went quiet. What were you doing?
Well, Harry was born in 78.
Right.
Fatherhood was big for me at that time, and I graduated in 79, so there was another factor. I did not have time to do anything in the evenings. Stalking and that stuff never completely stopped. Basically collecting detective magazines and sketches and slip cards and 3x5, that continued. The only time I had to do anything would be out of town. That's when the motel parties started. I'd work up a sexy frizzy by doing bondage. A lot of times I'd have pictures of the girls and go through that, lay them out, rearrange them, look at them, or bring things out from the hidey holes of my collection that I got from victims. I bought a nice big suitcase and I had a lock on it. When I was packing up and ready to go out of town, I would take enough of those things with me. When Paula was at work and I had time off, I would wash all the stuff, clean it all up, and dry it out. And I started to be real careful I didn't leave anything in there. And then I'd hide that back in my regular closet. My wife caught me twice, and boy, she was really upset, and I was upset because I got caught. She just told me, this is it. You ever do this again, ever catch you, we're going to leave. They're going to take the kids. We're going to divorce you. I made sure that would never happen again.
There was a time where you thought about suicide.
Yeah, I put a 357 in my mouth. I just felt to a point where maybe it was the man upstairs or something with the family. God thought the time has come. I'm basically stalking somebody else. So I got another person I'm going to set up for. I need to end this because I'm going to take somebody's life again.
You put a loaded 357 in your mouth.
Yep. I was just in that mood to take my life.
And what did it feel like when you didn't pull the trigger and you put the gun down? Then what went through your mind?
I guess I chickened out. I just couldn't do it.
Well, it sounds like you gave that a lot of thought. Was that about having regrets and remorse?
That may be. I feel guilty to a degree. At one time, I was more religious than I am now. I thought, well, gosh, if indeed heaven does exist, what will my grandparents think of me while I'm doing all this? But my concept on religion right now is a lot different than it used to be.
Okay. Remember the dream you sent to me? I want to read that back to you and see if you have anything to say about it. Do you mind?
Oh, huh.
Okay, so the dream was about a boxcar, and here's what you wrote. One end had an old-fashioned barber shop, like my grandpa Cook had. In my dream, I'm working on a letter to you, so it is spread out on the table. I get my call number for a haircut and realize there is too much stuff left out for eyes to see. So I walk back to put it into my black briefcase. Then the alarm clock goes off in my dream, and I'm trying to shut it off, and at the same time, 2 police officers come in. One taps me on the shoulder and says, "We know you did more than 10. Then I awake to find out the real alarm clock is buzzing away. I've always really wondered about that dream and what it meant, and it sounded like you meant some very dark things.
It does.
The dream. This is a dream you had, and you wrote it to me. What do you think it means?
Yeah.
You're clearly protecting secrets in this dream, and it is related to your BTK activities. I'm really curious about what else there is that you would want to tell me.
Well,
This dream is related to your BTK activities, and it is something that you're writing to me, but you don't want other people to find it.
I kind of recall a little bit about the writing that, but I sure don't recall all the detail. But basically, as I told the police, Ken is it.
Okay, well, let's continue this, thinking about this conversation. And if you do have things that you could write down, that would be great.
Okay, all right. I will do that for you. Okay. If I walk by one of the blocks or something like that, I just wave at her and say hi. She's usually out in the front yard tending her flowers. That was a long wait. I had to wait a long time in the closet. And I bet I spent an hour and a half in that closet before he left. But he left, and then she went to bed.
You think you could participate in church activities while at the same time harming other people?
Yes, I did.
Didn't it seem to violate what you believed?
I know people would say, wow, what you did with Mrs. Hedge in the church, you know, the house of God, doing something like that, terrible. But I hadn't had any, what I guess you would call real bondage-type pictures of a female.
But when you first decided to use a room in the church to bring a body, to dress, to take pictures of, did it seem weird? Like, why would you even think of using the church?
No, it was a way to get what I wanted done. That place was not what I call my typical casing. The only opportunities that I had to really look for my next victim was around lunchtime, and I would drive over there and eat, and then I'd watch her place from my car. I used my rust of the telephone man. I had the hard hat on and the little symbol I stuck on it, and some gear that looked like telephone gear, you know, in my hands.
Didn't you know that her husband was coming home?
She mentioned it, but I thought, well, she may be lying on that. That was a big risk. It really was the middle of the day, around noontime. So that was a big risk that my focus was on her.
Did you ever think about what it would be like for you if somebody entered your home and did something like that to your wife?
I would have stepped in and fought him for sure, doing everything possible to protect my wife or my kids.
But I mean, what if you found her dead, murdered? What would that have been like for you?
Oh, that would have been very upsetting. It's like revenge to come back on me. Well, I was building, I guess, toward what I call the perfect murder. She thought the car had run into her house because I broke the back door. And I thought to myself, what if she stepped out of that door with a shotgun? I said, it's all over. Lord, good Lord. My wife, my kids, and my family, friends are going to know all about it. Here I am caught, like a rat in a trap. I had like 55 projects. People were pretty close to meeting the hand of death. It didn't happen.
What were you doing in those years when nothing was really happening?
Well, I was a good father, husband, raised my kids, did a lot of things for them, did a lot of things for the community. I worked at church, I worked at Scouts.
Okay.
But if I wasn't real busy, then I would go out on my prowling and look for my next victim. They were basically projects.
Did you feel like you were in control of your urges then?
Yeah. So I could always fantasize or look for more victims. That was part of the excitement, is being able to do the hunts.
So I have a report from a woman named Cheryl. She said she talked with you at the Blackout Lounge.
I used to go to that lounge. What I was trying to do was get more notches on my gun at that time. So I was in the mood. I had everything set. I had my hit kit, had rope, tape. I had two guns, a couple of knives. I was going to do something. It was at the height of my eruption. The project was the main target, and that didn't work out, so it was, what's next? Shirley Ryan. It was totally impromptu. I didn't know exactly who lived in that house because I followed her son home that time.
Did you like being a compliance officer?
Yeah, I did. It's pretty close to what I wanted to be, like a police officer, something like that. I've always wanted to be out there a little bit, be known, let them people know that I was still around. They thought I was maybe died in prison or moved out of the area, or basically just passed away.
When Ken Landwehr did a press conference about you, what was that like for you?
Well, that was pretty high. He finally came out and said, yeah, BTK still exists in our community, so be careful. I was having a field day with cat and mouse. So I was having fun.
Why did you decide to send the BTK story to the TV station?
I wanted the police or the general population to know that, yeah, there might be some more. You know, I mean, it's not right off the sunset. There might be some more.
I was wondering, because you were so attuned to media at that time, whether you ever considered a media person as a project. Not really, although that would have been something else if I think Susan was really worried that maybe I was after her, but I really didn't have her as I didn't have any media people at all. We were just using them to get things done, and that was the main purpose. What about driving into the Home Depot parking lot? Didn't you think they'd have a surveillance camera?
Well, where I did my incident where I put that stuff in the back of the pickup, there wasn't any cameras mounted on the light pole, so I knew if there was any cameras, they would be a distance. And I wouldn't be very distinguishing, mainly just a person. And I wasn't really too nervous about it. I sent a lot of stuff to the mail and didn't have any feedback or any kickbacks from it. I guess I got confidence that they were sort of buddies or something, or friends. I kind of had a little bonding with Landwehr. I think I kind of bonded with him.
This letter is from BTK. And we
thought they were wanting to play cat and mouse with me, which they were, but I thought they would be truthful.
The floppy, was it just a test file on it, or was there anything else on it?
No, that was it. This is just a test. I wanted to see if they would pick up on it or to get through okay. There wasn't anything beyond that. This is a test.
Were you worried about getting caught during this time, that they might trace something back to you?
Yeah, I was real careful with my fingerprints. I didn't even think about Miss Seaman. They would have had to save that, 30 years? But they also had a DNA sample from Fox. Hank Wagonly. She had some scrapings underneath her fingernail for me because we did fight.
Let's talk about when you did get caught. It was a huge effort. What was that like to be in the middle of it?
They had helicopters and all kinds of stuff around. Anyway, when I pulled off to go down that side street, they were all lined up on the street, and I thought, what are they there for? Could it be me? And then as soon as they appeared in the rear view mirror, I knew, uh-oh. I couldn't figure out how they knew. I first thought they made the connection when I dropped off my floppy in a mailbox. And that what really threw me, because how could they figure that with no cameras or anything?
Right.
So I thought I could get out of it. I talked to Mr. Landwehr. He said, you know why you're going downtown? And I said, I've got an idea. I think that tipped it off right there.
That's the way of the catching thing. My job with message, the paper said,
Rex, it's okay.
Rex is okay.
Yeah, you're right.
I need to ask you.
Sure.
You like it?
Because I was trying to catch you.
When you asked them to tell you if the floppy could be traced, why did you trust them?
Kind of like the scout oath, always be truthful. I just was trustful. But they had declared war on me, and wars are not nice things. I actually felt like they should have given me more respect, I guess, playing their cat and mouse game.
Why did you finally confess during the interrogation?
They talked about the DNA, so nowhere along the line was they going to be able to escape that. So that was the final link. I was caught, there wasn't anything else to do, to be honest. One time I was spelling, I think I was writing something to the church or something, and I was using her computer, doing newsletters and back and forth. And she says, "You spell just like BTK." I go, "Whoa." I said, "Yeah, I've always been bad on spelling."
When you were arrested, did it occur to you that people who looked up to you how they were going to feel about that?
Devastated. I can't believe that, Wow, Dennis has been arrested. What happened? How? Yeah. I'm sure that crossed their mind. I was very, very depressed on that, well, first of all, I didn't think I was ever going to get arrested, so, you just keep going and keep going, so you never think that would ever happen. Pretty soon I'll be a black hole. I won't be here. I'll be gone. Yeah, I've accumulated a lot of deaths, a lot of hurt and shame on my family and everything, and it's kind of like things have been sucked into me, or I'm basically in a black hole.